At a conference a couple years ago, a colleague contrasted the way in which we each used blogs in the classroom. She referred to her approach, which included clear assignments, deadlines, and grading of each of those assignments, as the drill instructor approach. My use, which includes the inducement to blog but with less direction, self or peer evaluation, and little topical control, she considered to be the hippie approach. In what follows, I offer a discussion of, if I can borrow a term from another knowledge domain, unsupervised learning. My objective in many courses is to make myself superfluous to the learning process. In my best courses, this is exactly what happens. One of the reasons blogging and social software is so enticing for me as a teacher is that it opens the door to an environment that seems especially well suited to learning. Just as the vast landscape of the library historically offered an opportunity to engage in a system of knowledge, social software and the blogosphere represents an important learning environment, a structure that seems in many ways better suited to learning than the classroom. While it may be compared with a library in some ways, the blogosphere is different in that it welcomes the neophyte, the newbie, to write from the very outset. It encourages this creator-centric literacy. Inherent to this approach is the idea that blogs are somehow in and of themselves learning devices, that somehow they naturally lead to individual and to group learning. There are other systems that seem well suited to learning. Since Rousseau, we've considered undeveloped nature to be in some way able to teach us about the world. Certain toys, even if their initial intent, like blogs, appears to be more ludic than didactic, also seem to encourage a kind of learning. But if learning happens in blogs, how does it happen? Where does writing come in? Why does the sociability of the medium matter? And what can we do to encourage a learning blogosphere? When it comes to blogs and learning, perhaps there's a scale ranging from structured teaching situations on one end to learner-driven exploration on the other. Blogging is used across this entire spectrum. Stephen Downes has already suggested in a College Quarterly article thinking of the horseless carriage as a metaphor for use of blogging in education. The earliest uses of any technology are as a replacement for other technologies. But every technology comes with both intended and unintended consequences. In the case of the automobile, turning to steam and eventually gasoline power allowed for increased speed and reliability, but also led to suburbs and global warming, neither of which were easily predicted. So the earliest use of a weblog is often simply as a kind of replacement technology. Rather than managing the course using a simple web page or Blackboard or WebCT, the instructor creates a course weblog, or she might decide to have students keep their own blogs. In either case, it's a fairly conservative use of the technology. It's intended to make things more efficient and easier. That was one of the main reasons I started blogging for my courses. Like other instructors, I was looking for a format that allowed for discussion that was largely unthreaded, flexible, and easily accessible. The intended result was achieved. The quality of student work improved significantly. By providing an easy way of allowing for peer review, even if that did not include peer critique specifically, students became more invested in their work. While peer review is common in the arts and humanities, less common is opening up your work to anyone who might be interested. This initial opening of the work to the other students in the class often made it equally transparent to the rest of the world. One of the first unintended consequences of blogging in my classes was that authors of the work we were reading in a senior seminar began commenting on the discussion from as far away as Australia. This was a pleasant surprise for both the students and for me. There's much that can be said for this small step in the direction of blogging, but as I've noted, I think it represents a fairly conservative boundary. As intriguing as many students' course blogs have been, the way the blogs evolve after the course is far more exciting. In many ways, classroom blogging seems to me to be a gateway to future learning. Reading blogs is naturally a learning experience. It would be difficult to read anything for 2 hours and come away not having learned anything. So we're taking learning here in its broadest possible definition. That is, any sort of change in understanding, any sort of new information, any sort of change in behaviors. When people complain that students watching television are not learning, what they generally mean is they're not learning the right sorts of things. There are two answers to this challenge. The first of these is to understand what it is these people are learning when they use blogs in the wild. A recent Pew Internet and American Life survey indicates that a significant number of bloggers, more than half in total, think the creation of practical knowledge is one of the reasons they blog. The gold standard of these how-tos, as they are often called, is the recipe, a clear set of instructions or a pattern for creating something, in this case, food. Of course, how-tos are not just on blogs. They are a form of content that seems particularly well suited to the web in general. There are tens of thousands of tutorials leading Photoshop users through complex processes, and Linux and other open source products probably would never have become so widely used if not for a collection of how-tos, which for many systems make up a substantial part of the documentation in toto. It almost seems difficult to find a blog that lacks a how-to, especially for bloggers who are just starting out. When they discover how to make some aspect of their blog work, they are likely to convey that information to the reader. Indeed, it may be argued that the genealogy of the weblog, its history as a way of annotating hyperlinks on the web, make the how-to somehow a primary or original form of blog post. That said, it's also, for want of a better word, the most teacherly example of learning through weblogs. Turning back to the Pew survey for a moment, we see that another popular reason for blogging is the opportunity to document your personal experiences or share them with others. I think that because of this, many people think of blogging as a very egoistic or even solipsistic practice. But writing always assumes an audience, and the audience of a blog in many ways lives that experience along with the blogger and learns from it. If you want to know what it's like to be an emergency room doctor, a professional athlete, or a lawyer, you can go to a blog and live these experiences along with the blogger. To be sure, the kinds of knowledge and experiences presented tend to be limited to those with the privilege of time, at least for now. But being able not only to read about the personal experiences firsthand, but engage in a conversation about them, remains a fantastic opportunity for the curious. While some of the elements of blogging as a genre, that it tends to be timely and unedited, for example, are particularly well suited to those hoping to acquire some understanding of an area, the learning blogosphere only exists because people are able to participate directly. So what is it that people are learning about online? This is an empirical question in some ways. We could get at this question somewhat by finding out what kind of content appears online, and particularly in blogs, and conversely what kind of content is absent. But given that individuals engage in the blogosphere in a million different ways, and change themselves in just as many ways, even that is difficult. At a very superficial level, we can see that the blogosphere offers an embarrassment of riches when it comes to incidental learning, perhaps because it is less incidental than it at first appears.